KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
Watergate! Watergate!
Jim Schutze here with Get Off My Lawn. Glad to be back on a Saturday morning. It's Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn, which is the KNON community radio version of a column I write every weekday on the Dallas Observer webpage. And we're talking today about a topic that has a bunch of layers, but it's really, really interesting to me, and I hope it will be to you. I have a couple guests sitting here, and I'll bring them on in a minute. The Reverend Peter Johnson and a gentleman named Billy Buckley, who has come with Peter. We're discussing something that I've been talking about in the Observer, which is a program that Reverend Johnson has put together that would work through DART. It's kind of working its way through the bureaucracy at DART, but it's a very innovative scheme aimed at the recycling of disused railroad tracks, and in particular the use of ex-offenders to do this work. I've written a lot for the Observer, and we've talked here on KNON about the issues of extreme unemployment and stubborn unemployment and poverty in our city, and how it works and how many people. I mean, the numbers are just staggering when you drill down and start looking at census tracts. For all my years of doing this kind of stuff, I had never really looked closely at it until the city started proposing a exclusive, expensive golf course and a English riding club in southern Dallas that they said would cure poverty in the surrounding areas. And so I wondered how much poverty there was. And the numbers for the census tracts right around the English Riding Club and the golf course, it'll cost $150,000 to $200,000 per person to join the golf course. But once the poor people in that area have saved up that much money, I think that they'll be able to play some really nice golf. Anyway, when I looked at the numbers, and they're not funny. They are not funny. 60% of the people in that area are called, it's not unemployed, it's called not in the labor force. They didn't have a job before. They're not looking for one now because they're not going to get one. They're not going to have one tomorrow. They are outside the job market. And when you drill down and begin and just go around and ask people what their deal is, you find all sorts of reasons for that. Well, one of the most common is that a lot of people are ex-offenders. We dump thousands and thousands of kids out of the public school system in Dallas every year who are unable to read or write. They go pretty much from, they call it the school to prison pipeline. They wind up in the pen for drug possession and stuff early in life. After that, they are ex-offenders who can't read or write, and they really got the cards stacked against them. When you go around and talk to those folks, they cover the spectrum. I mean, there are some bad people in there. There's some not very smart people in there, but there are a bunch of really smart, ambitious people who could be doing all kinds of things with their lives. It's just that most of us don't realize that a prison sentence is a life sentence in this system in terms of what you can do afterwards. So anyway, I kept kind of beating my head against the wall, thinking, well, what do you do? Most companies are terrified to hire ex-offenders. They've been, especially when you look at public institutions, we in the media beat up on them if we find out that some guy who's working as a custodian in the school system was in the pen 20 years ago. I don't know why that's a story, but it is. If the guy hasn't reoffended in all those years and everybody thinks he's a sterling citizen, why not leave him alone? But we don't, and so the institutions are terrified of getting caught having ex-offenders on the payroll. Companies are the same. The problem is, for some recent reporting, I talked to a lot of young guys and I talked to clergy in southern Dallas who said that a lot of kids come back from that first trip to the pen bound and determined never to go back. You could almost say, okay, it worked. We talk about how prison doesn't work, but you could, if you look at that determination never to go back, it does work. And they've also done vocational training while they were in prison. So they come out thinking, okay, I'm going to get a real job and have a real life, and this is never going to happen to me again. And then they confront the bitter truth. They're not going to get a job, ever. And all of these temptations in the neighborhood start to face them anyway. I'm going to let somebody who knows a lot more about this than I do, the Reverend Peter Johnson, well known in the community. Everybody knows him. A veteran of the real civil rights movement, was still a teenager in 1965 when he got the whey beaten out of him on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and Bloody Sunday. We're lucky to have Peter Johnson in this community because he brings us a lot of perspective on issues. Dallas is always very reluctant to look outside itself. We have a kind of a Hicktown syndrome where we don't ever compare our experience elsewhere with the people in the rest of the country, and that's a big mistake. And Reverend Johnson has, over the years, has been a major resource for the city in terms of his ability to bring perspective. Peter, can you talk for a little bit about why people reoffend and what it does and what their lives are when they come out that first time? And I think you got it, yeah, in case we get...
Well, first, Jim, thank you for this opportunity to discuss some of the problems that afflict my people in the inner city communities, the problems of poverty and miseducation that the DISD and most the independent school districts is guilty of. Provide a unique kind of ongoing problem, especially for African American males. Many years ago, I was involved in creating the first halfway house for ex-offenders, where Judge Justice in East Texas had ruled that the Texas penal system was just overcrowded and it must be dealt with. We put together a halfway house to take nonviolent ex-offenders out of the penitentiaries to help address Judge Justice order that something had to be done. And I learned a lot of lessons during that period. This was probably more than 30 years ago. The lessons was that most of the men in the jails today and in the jails and the prisons 35 years ago, the common denominator, they did not finish high school. Mm-hmm. One common denominator. The other common denominator is that they were either, their jobs that they could get was what I consider underemployed, where they made minimum wage. Some even made less than minimum wage in areas where people could get away with this. Their inability to meet their obligations, to take care of their babies and their families and pay their bills, forced them into what I call petty criminal behavior. If you look at the rate of black prisoners going back to prison once they're released, it's in the 90s. And in less than a year, if you're released from the Texas penal system, say in Harris County or Dallas County or Williamson County in January, before the next January, you're probably back in the penitentiary. And this goes on and on and on.
And let me just, as you're talking, go back to the starting point, that if you dump a kid, or if the kid dumps himself out of high school as a teenager, he hasn't finished, he's been bored, he's had trouble in school, that kid in that shape is not in good shape to stay out of trouble, right?
No, absolutely. Once you get into the criminal justice system, you're in the criminal justice system, and it never ends. Not to relate this or tie this directly to the problems of poverty is misunderstanding the problem. Last week in the Dallas Morning News, there was a long piece on safe communities, and it talked about how safe some of those communities are in places like McKinney and Frisco and other areas, which is very good. But the problem is those communities does not have abject ongoing poverty, hopelessness that goes along with poverty, and desperation. If history hasn't taught us anything, it's taught us that desperate people would do desperate things. If you look at the 4 major African-American communities in the southern sector, West Dallas, the average income for a family of 3, because you very seldom find a family of 4. In most instances, the man is not in the home, he's in jail. So a family of 3 in West Dallas, their average income is less than $10,000 a year. In South Dallas, it's about $12,000, less than $11,000, it's $11,900, almost $12,000 a year. In Pleasant Grove or East Dallas, it's $13,000. In Oak Cliff, Southeast Oak Cliff, it's less than $14,000 a year for a family of 3. This is the average income. So if you can count, and the math don't add up. You can't pay your rent or your house note and pay your utilities and buy food and pay for transportation if you're making less than $10,000 a year. You cannot take care of your family. So young men with babies and other responsibilities that leave DISD when they're 16 or 17 years old, they're looking for a way to be able to live in our society. The success symbols they see is the hustler, the dope dealer, the pimp. These people have the symbols of success.
Right.
The shiny car, the shiny jewelry, the pretty girls. So that's who they grew up to emulate.
And those guys can take care of their own.
Can take care of their own, yeah. It is a unique kind of trap that our society creates, and in creating it is a tremendous drain on taxpayers, as opposed to having these thousands and thousands of young men working and paying taxes. The state is taking care of them by locking them up in jails and having to take care of them. Then the other upside down illusion is that there's an industry in jails where people make money based on how many beds are filled in the jails.
Right. And we've seen instances in this country of conspiracy in the criminal justice system to fill those beds. I'm not saying that's the general picture in Texas, but we've seen if you set up this for-profit prison system, you've created an incentive to fill the prisons. I don't mean to offer this as an excuse exactly, but tell me what you think of this. If most people who've had a son, think about their son, whether it's poor people or rich people, and think if you took this kid, if he screwed up, and you put him in prison for a year and a half, and you told him that year and a half, you screwed up your life, and man, you better turn around. And then you said, we're going to help you get your GED, and you're going to take this training, and you're going to go to Bible school, and you're going to do all this stuff so you can have a good life. And the kid did all of it. He did all of it. And then he comes out on the street, and you say, okay, now the real truth is, you can never work. Most people can imagine how a young man would react to that, right? I mean,
Yeah, either you can never get a job, or you can get a job cooking French fries and hamburgers for minimum wage, and you can't pay your bills.
I just looked up minimum wage. If you work 40 hours minimum wage in Dallas, your take home is about $228 to $236 a week. People think rent is cheap for poor people. I'm amazed by how high it is.
Well, the problem is, you see, if a poor person go to Tom Thumb or Kroger to buy bread or milk, he pay the same price that rich people pay.
Yeah, you can fill up that cart with your whole $236 a week take home easy.
Absolutely. And especially if you've got babies, children, and other responsibilities. Right. 30-some years ago, when we opened up the first halfway house, there were companies here who we worked with who was very committed to helping us find employment for these ex-offenders. One of the companies was Shep's Dairy, and I talk about Shep's because men that Shep's hired 30-some years ago, some of those men stayed with Shep. And eventually retired, became supervisors and managers, and these were men. So that we know because of that experience that given an opportunity to be able to make a decent living and take care of your family responsibilities, these ex-offenders managed to stay out of trouble, not go back to jail, and stay with the company until they retired. I run into them all of the time, and they say, I'm retired. I got children in college now. I got grandchildren. I got a nice home. And these were men who got out of the penitentiary 30-some years ago.
Wow. Yeah. Let me pause for one moment to. We got Johnny Hughes holding on line one. Are you still there? Hello, Johnny. You still with us? Oh. Okay, well maybe he'll try us back at some point. So that's the difference. What you're describing is the difference between the destiny of the guy who gets out of prison and gets a job versus the man or woman who gets out of prison and cannot get a job.
Yeah, I brought Billy Buckley with me because every day ex-offenders come to me. I mean, they come every day. Desperate. They're out of the penitentiary. They have responsibilities. First, if they're on probation, every month they've got to have some money to pay the probation department to go to see their probation officer. They are behind with their probation fees. Nobody will give them a job. They are frustrated. They're about to give up and go back to doing whatever they was doing that sent them to the penitentiary in the first place. Billy Buckley, who I've known a long time, this work that I'm doing, I didn't just start doing this yesterday. I've been doing it for many years, working with African-American companies. Many years ago, we worked with Hewitt James and the James brothers doing apartment make-ready business, where we were able to hire and train a bunch of ex-offenders of how to do drywall work, how to paint, how to just do that kind of work. Billy was one of the men that we were able to hire. The problem with working, trying to help black African-American companies get contracts, they're fighting against the huge major contractors. So companies like the James brothers, we were always in a fight to get the next contract and to keep these men working. Billy was one of the men that we hired and trained who worked with us until we didn't have any more work. Then, of course, Billy can tell his own story, but I think it was a three-time losers what Billy is. But it all goes back to not being able to pay your bills, take care of your woman and your babies.
Well, Mr. Buckley, we may need to wait. We have to do a break in a minute. We got to go off the air for a minute. But when we come back, I would really appreciate it if you could just explain to people how it works, how the deal works, what happens if you go apply for a job, what your experience is, and what it would take for you to be able to, get out of that cycle and go do what everybody else does. And we have Joe holding on line 2. We're right at a break. Joe, don't give up on us. We'll be back in a minute. It's Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn.
Jim Hightower has moved to be a part of KNON's Speak Up Saturday. Jim Hightower's segments can now be heard at the start of each of KNON's great talk programming starting at 7 a.m. with Reverend Marion Barnett's show, Church Information and Open Forum, with the news and talk of South Dallas. Then at 9, the CWA presents Workers Beat with the news and talk of the unions, hosted by Gene Lance and Bonnie Matthias. At 10, the Dallas Observer presents Get Off My Lawn with Jim Schutze, bringing you the other side of Dallas news. Finishing up Speak Up Saturdays at 11 is Lambda Weekly with the news and talk of the LGBTQ community, hosted by David Taffet, Patty Fink, and Laurent Landis. Now starting at each of these shows is Jim Hightower's insightful segment at 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 a.m. each and every Saturday morning right here on the Voice of the People, Knon 89.3 FM.
Would you help a word to burn?
This is Sonny Boy Mark, and I'd like to take a minute here to tell you about over 60 minutes of great blues listening available now on KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 Blues CD. This is some great stuff, folks. 15 tracks from the Two Tones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, Johnny Red and the Roosters, the Chris Watson Band, the Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone with Charlie Love, David Millsap, Sir Loin and the Ass Kicking Machine, Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, and JJ and the Detonators. The 1,000 copies we made are selling fast, and we won't reissue it. Get yours now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Recordtown in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records and Rewind Music. The CD is available as a download at cdbaby.com. All proceeds benefit KNON, sponsored by Forever Young Records. Vinyl copies available at Forever Young Records only. For more info on Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, visit knon.org. Your ears been bending for some blues? Well, feed them the real thing with Texas Blues Radio Volume 5.
Jim Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn. We've been talking to the Reverend Peter Johnson and to Mr. Billy Buckley, and we're talking about ex-offenders in general, but we're going to get to a really exciting program that Reverend Johnson has put together that involves DART, that could become a model for resolving these kinds of problems nationwide. Joe has been patiently hanging on line 2. Joe, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
What's up today?
Yeah, hello, Jim. Hello, Peter.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
All right. We go way back, Peter. It's been a while. But the topic that you guys are on there, I was going to weigh in on with the hiring of the ex-felons. I would want you to weigh in on the subject of illegal aliens being hired. And where I'm coming from this is that, though, nothing against the Hispanic brothers, but many times the companies find the illegals a good hire because they can pay them cheap, they don't have to pay the benefits, but then they say they won't hire, say, a black or what have you because he has a criminal record.
And Joe, let me, if I may, jump in and point out one irony there, in that the companies will argue that they don't want to hire ex-felons because of the way it looks, and the public doesn't like it, and they don't want to get involved in a problem. But you make an excellent point. They're willing to take a risk on immigration raiding them.
If I will, see, now my background is prison. I made my living in the prison before I retired. Mm-hmm. When you hire an illegal alien, you don't know whether you got a murderer, a rapist, what you got. Right. So I don't see the irony. And Bo Pilgrim, who had to shut down his Pilgrim Pride chicken plant, right, he said that's what ran him out of business. He couldn't compete because he was trying to do it legally with the E-Verify and all of that. But his competitors were hiring illegal aid, and it run him out of business.
And Reverend Johnson will make a point somewhere along here, I'm sure, that the people who would be doing the work he's proposing at DART, who would hire former offenders, they've dealt with ex-offenders for years, and they know how to look them over. And they're not going to hire people who are dangerous or trouble. They know what they're doing, and they've worked with these people for forever. And
but when you get unknown aliens, you don't know who you got, rapist, murderer, what? I'd like to have him address that.
Sure.
Well, Joe, it's good to hear your voice again, brother. The problem with American corporations, of course, American wealth was built on slavery and cheap labor. So American corporations have not moved so far away from that reality. They hire illegal aliens because they can underpay them, cheat them in most instances, and not have to pay benefits for them. One of my great fears is that we must not allow the American corporate capitalism illusion to play us against poor brown people. These people are trapped in poverty also, and they're willing to work for, in a lot of instances, less than the normal wage that you would get as a carpenter's helper, as a plumber's helper. So we must be careful not to allow American companies to play us against these poor people. These people are trapped in poverty also.
And and let me add that it's always struck me that if you were really bound and determined that you wanted to eliminate illegal immigration, and that's been a touchstone of the Republican Party and the Tea Party, they want to get rid of the illegals. You could do that in one stroke. Simply insist on full enforcement of the workplace safety and payroll laws. Insist on enforcement of the law, and suddenly you've drained the incentive for hiring illegals.
Absolutely. These people were first, historically, they were brought here to work, to do cheap labor, to build railroads. Incidentally, which is ironic since we're going to be talking about railroads, just like Chinamen were brought here to work cheaply and to build things in our country. African Americans was brought here to build America, and because we built America free, we didn't charge anything for this. My forefathers helped build this nation, and they was not paid for it. But we've got to look forward as opposed to looking backwards. I'm more interested in the 19-year-old kid who dropped out of school when he was in 10th grade, who's already have a record, and what's going to happen to him over the next 30 years. Will he have an opportunity to build a decent life in our society? And
let me, at this point, and I want to remind listeners to give us a call, 972-647-1893, 972-647-1893. This is Get Off My Lawn. Mr. Buckley, let me ask you a question. The first time you went to prison, what was it for?
Burglary building.
Okay, and yeah, move up close to that thing. How old were you?
25.
How long were you in?
My first trip I was in for about 6 months.
And then when you came out, what did you want to do? What did you have in your head that you were going to do?
Finding a job, being able to support my loved ones, and so on.
And what happened? If you could describe for us how that goes down in real life.
Well, basically, it's a myth. It's like once you're convicted, you're branded. That's the same as a brand. You're branded, thanks to it, And on the application for that, it's going to ask whether or not you've been convicted of a felon. And from that point on, more than likely the job will go to a person who never been convicted.
What if you lie and you say, no, I never have been?
Well, it can come back to haunt you later on, and eventually you lose the job.
Yeah. So you got out, and you figured out, I'm not getting a job, or I'm not getting a job I can live on.
Correct. And for a break, getting a job.
So then what goes on in your head? If you're a young man and trying to make it, and you see this wall there that you can't get over,
basically, I got to do what I have to do, do what it takes to survive, support my family, my needs,
So what you can do is what? When you get to that, I got to do what I got to do, what is that?
Basically, whatever necessary.
Right. Okay. Well, I think I can guess what's ever necessary.
Because I'm so old, I don't remember. What years did you work with us with the James Company doing apartment make ready and doing other work that we was doing with Magna Homes, if I remember correctly, that contract?
That was 83.
Yeah. And of course, when that work ran out, were you able to get another job? But because we were really struggling to keep those companies hiring black people at ex-offenders. But when the work ran out, but because I don't know what happened there, but I know you eventually went back to jail. Yeah.
Back then, when I first started working for you all at Jamming Association thing, at that point I think I was 21, 22 years old. That was more money I ever made in my life. That was an opportunity that I haven't had opportunity to experience since.
Right.
Thing. It was good money. Thing. After that job ran out, it was back to by whatever means necessary.
Oh, so that was before the first time you went in.
Correct.
The job ran out, and a while later you were inside.
Yeah. Correct.
Peter, can you give people a thumbnail sketch of what it is that you're proposing to DART?
Well, yeah, first, one of the things I've been trying to do, I guess, over the last 30-some years is help small African-American companies find ways to do business so they can hire our people and train them. Now, just as the James brothers hired ex-offenders, I have 2 African-American railroad construction companies that I worked with for more than 30 years. Fleming Brothers, which is Archie and his brother Ken Fleming, and Billy Ray Heath, and his sons, which is a railroad construction company. These are 2 small companies that's been in business. I've been working with them for more than 30 years. They hire and train ex-offenders and pay them a good wage, and also train them in certain skills, for instance, how to do welding, torch cutting, forklift driving, heavy-duty equipment, bulldozers, front-end backhoes, and give these men an opportunity to learn the skill while they're working and making a good living. About a year and a half ago, I met with them, and they told me that DART owned a bunch of what they call dead tracks that would never be used again.
Right.
And we came up with a proposal and went to DART and asked DART, could you all allow us to tear up these tracks, reclaim the land at no cost to DART, and we would use the salvage to hire and train ex-offenders.
And what did they tell you about the tracks?
Well, the first place they told us that they didn't exist. We didn't know what we were talking about. Just literally call us a lie that says
they didn't have tracks like that.
that all of their tracks was being used, and they had a big, huge map on the wall that said this is all of our tracks,
right,
and we use all of our tracks. Well, the construction companies had showed me the dead tracks, and most of them were spurs that run into areas, for instance, into warehouses. Somebody mentioned Bo Pilgrim's company. There are railroad tracks that goes right into Pilgrim's company that's dead now, that will never be used again.
And it's not necessarily DART real estate. They don't own the land.
No, they own the tracks. They don't own the land. The land is owned by private people, but DART owns, and of course the city confirmed this. The Mayor Soom's office confirmed this to me, that DART owns all of the dead tracks.
So until your people told DART that they owned this track, they didn't know they owned this asset.
Oh, they denied it. We had to go all over Dallas County taking pictures of these tracks, writing down what the addresses were, then go back to DART and said, here are tracks that you all own, that will never be used again. And of course it creates all kind of environmental problems, because the cross ties is full of what's called curacao, and eventually as they rot, the rainwater runs into the groundwater. Rodents make nests in those rotting out cross ties, and what follow rodents? Snakes. So it creates a real environmental problem. So I was, what we was recommending to DART is, listen, let us clean all of this up for you at no cost to taxpayers. Let us take this, and in doing so, we can create 50, 60, maybe even 70 jobs for ex-offenders. These companies have a history of hiring and training ex-offenders, and I don't know how else to say it other than the fact, at no cost to taxpayers.
And DART gets rid of this potential liability in terms of having all this track out there that it's really. They didn't know they own it, but they do. They're liable for it. They're responsible for it. They're responsible for the cleanup, and you're talking about taking care of that for free.
For free, at no cost to DART. Eventually, DART sent, I think, 2 van loads of their executives over to my office, met with the contractors. Then they followed us, and we showed them dead tracks.
DART executives.
Yeah, from DART. And we showed them, so this is what we're talking about. And because these companies have a long history of doing this kind of work, a very positive history of doing this kind of work. with all of the credentials, all of the binding, and the insurance that they need. Dot told us, this is their words, what you all need to do is put together an unsolicited proposal.
Right.
This is their words.
Which is what?
I had never heard of it before, so we asked them, can we see what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Give us a. So they provided us with a copy of an unsolicited proposal. We put together an unsolicited proposal proposing that we would, these two companies would join together and go in and do this work.
And you're doing all this driving around the county, taking pictures of tracks, telling them they own the tracks, putting together this proposal. I believe that the companies also, at DART's request, Peter, I believe that they also went out and spent money to buy insurance or bonding or something.
Yeah, because DART told us, in first we already that we had to have a certain amount of insurance.
Right.
So to show you, God moves in mysterious ways. One of the ex-offenders that's been working with me very closely, his son-in-law plays for the Green Bay Packers. So his son-in-law loaned us the money to meet the insurance requirements because we didn't have it. Yeah.
So you're putting together this whole package with an assumption that DART's going to do what when you get it together?
That DART would give us the permission to go and do this work. And over the last 6 months, we've been taking applications for ex-offenders, and I meet with them on a daily basis. They come in and do it. I have churches, where the members of the church that's ex-offenders who can't get work. These churches are sending them to us. We give applications to the churches. I'm trying to find a way to stop the revolving door of African American offenders going in and out of the penitentiary like they're debutantes.
And I've spoken to both Billy Ray Heath and Archie Fleming, who are the two contractors you're talking about. I've met them, and these are very, very experienced guys in this kind of work. They're also not. You could look at these guys, and they're not naive. They've been around for a long time. I said, how do you tell if an ex-offender is really going to do the kind of work you want him to do? And they said it's easy. It's hard work. They said give the guy a pry bar, send him over there, and tell him to start pulling spikes out of the ties. And if he does it, he's a worker. And if he doesn't,
Yeah, and because they've been doing this for such a long time and hiring and training ex-offenders, they know, for instance, all of the applications that I have, I won't hire these men. Billy Ray and Archie has to hire them because they will vet them and look at them. Now, we have gotten a lot of help from the district attorney's office who's sending them to us. A lot of the agencies and, like I say, a lot of the churches are sending ex-offenders to us. But ultimately, the decision to whether or not they are hired or not will be made by Billy Ray and his company and Archie and his company.
And I think we're going to have another break in a minute, but Mr. Buckley, let me go back to you for a second, because you said something that when you're in this situation, you do what it takes. You do what it takes to survive. Now, I think most of us, if we look at a guy who's got a family or loved ones, I think most of us would respect that feeling, that I'm going to do what it takes. I'm not going to just give up. But what if somebody comes along to you and says, listen, here's a job where you can make good money. How important would that be to you in deciding, here's a job where you can make good money, but it's really a tough job. You're going to be out there in the heat doing this heavy lifting and this heavy work. How would you react to that?
Well, I would take, that was no problem for me with me accepting the job. Because the last thing I want to do is wind up back in prison,
Right. Even though it's a really tough job.
It wouldn't matter.
You could do it.
I could do it.
Being in prison is tough.
Correct.
So working on the railroad, that's tough, but you'd take that over anything that would put you back in prison.
I wouldn't have no problem accepting, today, I wouldn't have no problem accepting any job, But, it'd be more than a blessing to find a job that pay good, pay well, that would enable me to meet my financial needs and things like that. And I feel I can say that for all the other ex-offenders who's out here looking for work at the present time.
Right.
What I was going to say is Billy has been working, I guess, for the last year with my community garden program, helping develop gardens in the inner city, and that's not easy work.
If you can work with Peter on gardening, you can do anything. This is another break, and we'll be back in a minute.
If it's time to get rid of your old gas guzzler, the Knon Vehicle Donation Program can help. There is still a market for those old vehicles, and if you donate it, you are helping to support the quality programming here on KNON. Just call 877-KNON-AUTO or go online to knon.org. We'll take care of everything from pickup to tax paperwork. That's 877-KNON-AUTO.
This is William, your videographer for the KNON talk shows. You can watch Workers Beat by going to knon.org website. Click on schedules to the left side of your screen. Choose Workers Beat's page. Scroll to the bottom of the page, then choose your favorite show to watch or download. This show will be ready for viewing by lunchtime Tuesday. Have a great day.
Hey, babes, take one.
Jim Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn, our final segment. We've been talking to the Reverend Peter Johnson and to Mr. Billy Buckley about a really, really interesting program that Reverend Johnson has helped a couple of railroad contractors put together to go to DART and at no cost to DART clean up and remediate abandoned track beds that they're all over the city. DART didn't even know they owned them. This group had to identify them and show them to DART. The group jumped through a bunch of hoops, went out and bought insurance and filled out a big, huge proposal for it and so on. But you hit a wall at one point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't understand what's holding this up regarding DOT, because they don't have to allocate any money out of that budget for us to do this, other than the fact that you're talking about over 100 miles of dead tracks.
Right.
And they spray it out all over. You may have 20 over here, 5 over here, 2 over here. And we thought this was kind of a kind of simple deal for DART. Say, hey, we got some companies with the equipment, with the history, with the insurance, and we're going to hire and train these ex-offenders and put them to work, and DART doesn't have to pay a dime. But for the last 4 or 5 months, first DART denied they knew anything. After they told us to do this non-solicited proposal, then they denied any knowledge of it. We went back to talk to DART. We don't know what you're talking about. No, we didn't say that. We don't know you.
So something happened.
Yeah, and what we think happened was inside DART's right-of-way division, there are relationships between those executives and Anglo contractors that also do this kind of work.
Right.
And I call it brother-in-law kind of deals, where the fact that you had these 2 small black companies are getting ready to make all of this money, although they're going to create jobs for people who nobody want to hire.
Right.
I believe that inside DART, they began to share this information with some of the big white contractors. Now DART is talking about, well, we've got to do a RFP, we've got to put this out for bid, we've got to give everybody a chance to bid. Well, first, we bid at 0. How's you going to underbid us?
And if you put it out for bid, you're putting what out for bid? You're just tearing up the tracks, or is DART going to put out for bid, tear up the tracks using ex-offenders? Are they going to keep the ex-offender thing in?
I have no idea.
Because that's the payoff,
yeah,
right?
See, I'm offended that first they denied any knowledge of. They said that we don't even know you.
If you got this to work, what would you do with it in terms of using it as a model?
Well, first, if we can do this and do it right, we can do this in Tarrant County. We can do it in Harris County. We can do this literally all over Texas.
Right.
We could do it all over the South and eventually all over the nation. And our idea is a simple idea. This is work that has to be done, reclaiming the land for the salvage, but hiring and training ex-offenders. Now, the ex-offenders that we're talking about hiring aren't all black. I have Anglo young men who've come to me, and we welcome them just like we welcome the black. We have the Hispanic ex-offenders that have filled out applications, women, because there's no reason a woman can't learn how to drive a forklift or a backhoe. And so we've had all kinds of ex-offenders who've come to us literally begging us for an opportunity to work.
Well, it sounded to me when you told me about this, I first started calling DART, it didn't look good. I was kind of getting a lot of the same thing. Well, we're not sure what this is. Well, they may have exaggerated this or that. Well, we're not sure if we can do it. But then you told me to call John Danish, the Irving attorney who's chairman of the DART board, and I was quite surprised by what he had to say. I mean, he knew all about it.
Yeah.
Knows you, knows Joyce Foreman, knows leadership in Southern Dallas, understands the problem, and was very enthusiastic about this. He told me that as far as the board goes, not the staff, but the board, they've had all kinds of stuff going on because the legislature's in session and this and that. And he said we probably lost sight of this. But he said we shouldn't have lost sight of it. And he said he thinks it's a vision and a dream and that it needs to happen. So he sounds very committed to it.
I like John Danish. I think he's a good man. But you see, to sit at my desk or to walk in my shoes, to see grown men come to me and say, I got 2 babies. I've been out of jail for 8 months. I can't get a job. My lights is off. I'm 4 months behind with my probation, and cry. I know that God wants me to help these men. And all I'm trying to say is, listen, this is not going to cost DART 1 red cent. Why not let us do this so we can put these men to work? And in putting them to work, first we're saving taxpayers money, because if we don't put them to work, they're going to be doing just like what Billy says, they're going to do whatever it takes to meet their obligations and to pay their bills and to take care of their babies and their families. You know.
And if this works, if you get this up and running, then you have a model that you can replicate elsewhere.
That we can do all over Texas and eventually all over the southern states. I know the South much better than I know, say, the northern states. But if we can make this work, we can move this all over the southern states. We can do it all over Texas. Tarrant County has the same problem. Dallas County have a large population of ex-offenders who cannot find decent work where they can make a decent living. And we can save 10% from going back to prison. Right now in the black community, 90% of the young men that's released from prison go back within a year. That is just unbelievable. If we can cut that just by 10%, we save taxpayers a tremendous amount of money. If we can cut it in half, and I believe we can, just by providing decent income and forcing these men, because part of what I tell them when they come to me, if we hire you, you must learn a skill, not just get a paycheck and work hard. You've got to decide, I want to learn how to be a welder, or learn how to operate heavy duty equipment, but you must learn a skill.
Well, and it's a chance to out there somewhere on the horizon, it's a chance to turn around this huge issue of people who are locked out of the workforce, and people like Mr. Buckley here who are ready, willing, and able to go out there and do hard work in order to get back into mainstream society. I think, have you got a caller sitting on? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. They probably just gave you that. I didn't see that note. Well, it's not about your language, is it? You haven't used any bad language.
No, I promised I wouldn't cuss.
Okay, all right.
No, actually, we had some people call in and ask for Peter Johnson to give them a call after the show. They want to speak with you personally about the show that you're talking about. You're giving a lot of people a lot of great things to talk about with you.
Well, great. And again, I'll go back to Mr. Buckley. What does it mean if somebody comes along to you or to other people you know, men and women, and says, look, here's this deal we can give you, where you work and you get paid good money, what would that mean to you in terms of hope and promise?
It would be opportunity for me, a job that's paying a good salary and thing. It'll be a blessing. It'll be opportunity for me to do some of the things that I really need to do to get back into the mainstream.
Right. That's the other question is, what is the other plan that people have in mind? What do they think happens if you tell full-grown American men and women, you're shut out, you will never be forgiven?
Well, they give up. That's why you have a large population who stand on corners, sit under trees, play dominoes, drink beer.
Yeah,
they've literally given up. Dr. King said it's a form of death, where you're still walking around and breathing, but you've literally given up on finding a better life, having an opportunity to change your economic status. I talk to men on almost on a daily basis who aren't even looking for jobs anymore. They've accepted the fact that we are black, we are ex-offenders. Ain't nobody gonna give us a job. If they give me a job, I'm cooking hamburgers or French fries, I'm making minimum wage, and I can't pay my bills, I can stand on the corner, and as opposed to making minimum wage, I can sell dope and make $250 a day.
Right.
Or I can go back to doing what I know how to do, climbing in and out of people's windows, selling stuff hot. Desperate people do desperate things. And a part of dealing with the desperate situation in my community is figuring out ways where we can find decent work for these men. And I see the good in them, you know.
Yeah, and that's what the two gentlemen who are the contractors I spoke to said the same thing, that you got to see the good and the strength and the courage, and that when a guy says, I will do whatever it takes, that's not a coward. That's not giving up. There's a courage in that, but you got to give him something. When you talk about whatever it takes, you got to give him something that it takes that isn't against the law.
See, when they come to me, they've been to everybody else. They've been to the elected officials. They've been to the preachers. They've been to the organizations. When they come to me, they have already been to everybody else.
Right.
And they're right on the verge of doing something to go back to prison. You see, I have to talk them out of going back to selling dope or going back to selling hot stuff, because they're literally on the verge of doing something that will send them right back to jail.
But what do you tell a man if you can't come up with a job for him, and if he says, I'm desperate, and I'm sick of this, and I'm angry, and I'm weeping inside, or weeping to your face, what do you tell him?
Well, first, that I understand your frustrations, but going back to selling dope is not going to help your wife and your baby. When you go back to jail, you'll still be leaving them alone. And to have some faith and some hope, and to give us a chance to open up doors that you can walk through.
And so you're trying to find those doors.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got Phil on line 4. Phil, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Sir, what's up this morning?
Well, the most interesting thing I hear this morning is evidently there's an institutionalized of young males that are sent to prison, and there's no talk about the female population, or if they're a female population, or as I read in the paper, these prisons where they keep young men, like one legislator in the quote in the paper said, how are they going to cut that, because it brings all these up into these rural areas where they keep them.
Right. Right. Well, Phil, thank you. I appreciate your call. That's a good point, and Reverend Johnson had spoken about that earlier, which is the problem.
I've been just on and off, but like I said, I think it's more like a male situation where all the males are thrown in as an industrial product.
Right, and Phil, because we're coming up to the end, I'm going to let you go, but the let's be real about this. Let's talk about African American male children. And Peter, what do you know about their fate? If they're born into poverty,
they're born into poverty. You take a kid that's born in Dixon Circle, raised in Dixon Circle. The first, in his life, he doesn't see much money. He sees food stamps. He sees vouchers. The people who have money are symbols of success for him. This is the dope dealer. This is the pimp. This is the hustler. These are the people who has symbols of success. The cars, the clothes, the diamonds, and the gold hanging around their neck. The influence on this young African American boy is, if you want to be successful, here's the road to take.
Then you let him get out of school with no tools to do anything else.
The Dallas Independent School District is the biggest feeder to the Texas penal system in this part of the country. As I said, I visit the jails. The common denominator in the jails with African American males, they didn't finish high school, and they are unskilled and either miseducated or completely uneducated. These are problems that we must figure out a way to deal with these problems.
And let me say that when I write about this, I get a big pushback from people who express anger, and they say it's their fault, it's their decision, they're the ones who are responsible. Okay, I don't know. We can fight. We can talk about that one all night long, I think. But what if you can take the guys, the men who've been through the toughest part of this cycle, and turn them around with a job?
Well, what I say to people is, 30-some years ago, we opened up the first halfway house in Texas for nonviolent ex-offenders. Companies like Shep's Dairy, who worked with me to hire these and train these men. 30 years later, some of these men have retired after 25, 30 years working on the job.
Right.
They became managers and supervisors. They raised their families. They never went back to jail.
There's the proof, and what a miracle. And before we get crowded out by the clock, let me make a point, and I hope you'll join me in this, that if there is anybody out there listening who thinks this sounds like a good idea, this deal with DART, please let DART know. Let somebody know. Let your minister know. Let the neighborhood leaders tell people that this deal at DART sounds very, very promising, because it's not a done deal, is it?
No, we don't know what DART's going to do, because, like I said, a couple of months ago, they denied any knowledge of me. And let me also say, I don't do this for money. See, I'm not in this for money. It is a part of my ministry that I'm called to do. Please call DART and tell DART to allow these contractors to do this work at no cost to taxpayers at all. There's no excuse for DART holding this up.
And especially, you got to talk about the element of hiring the ex-offenders. Sure, somebody else can come in there and pull up the tracks, but are they going to maintain this element of providing opportunity for ex-offenders? Mr. Buckley, I really thank you for coming in and sharing, and it takes some guts in here to come in here and talk on the radio about some hard times that you've been through, but you can tell from the tone of your voice that you're ready to roll if somebody gives you a good opportunity and a clean shot.
As I stated earlier, I've been knowing Peter for a while, and throughout the years, Peter, I've been there for many times to have an opportunity to come to him. He shared with me, like the Garden Project back when we was doing Magnum Home, Independent Magnum Home, the Make Ready Project, things for here. And he's, to me, he's been an inspiration in my life, things for here. And I think that he could likewise be that same inspiration in other young ex-offenders' lives.
This could spread out. This could spread out, and this could help a lot of people and even help turn things around for a lot of people.
That's correct.
Really, thank you guys for coming in. Thanks very much. It's a fascinating topic. We'll see you here next week. Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. Look for us on the Dallas Observer webpage. Bye.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.